Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, and joining me on a very special episode today is none other than Rhode Island FC midfielder Joe Brito joining us here on the podcast. Joe, welcome to Raising Anchor.
Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. I know that there's a lot going on this week to prepare for the Rowdies this weekend, and just so appreciative that you can spend some time with us and with the listeners. So, you ready to get into this?
Yeah, all set.
So, it's the question we always ask everyone, but I always like to start. We're here in this moment, Joe. You're playing professionally for Rhode Island FC, but what sparked your love of the beautiful game?
Basically, my family was always really into soccer. My dad's a big Benfica fan and Portuguese national team fan. So, growing up, he was always watching games, and obviously, so was I. So that's kind of what started it for me. My father also played soccer, so just going to his games on the weekend and watching him play just kind of started me off on the route to playing soccer. And then when I was at school all the time, I was always playing soccer with my friends during recess and at gym class and stuff like that. And I just always kind of felt right playing soccer. It was always one of the better sports I was at playing. So, yeah, I just started young and just stuck with it.
When players are going up and they make those decisions, whether professionally or just for fun, I'm always curious at the positioning that they end up deciding to start becoming as a player. And so for you, you're a midfielder now, you're a very dynamic midfielder. Was that always the case, or did you kind of go through the other positions as you were growing up? And if so, what did it take for you to solidify into that midfielder structure and role?
Yeah, I've always been the kind of player that was very active, always kind of running around a lot, always never staying still. So that's kind of what made me, a lot of coaches think that I should be a midfielder. But a lot of the times growing up, I was always kind of an undersized player. I kind of hit my growing spurt pretty late. So a lot of the times I would either play out wide and stuff like that. So especially like when I was in academy, my first year I was one of the smallest players, so I played out in the wing. And then as I kind of caught up to everybody and on size and strength and speed and all that, I kind of got moved back into the center, which I'm most comfortable at and where I'm most natural at. And then when I went off to college, it was kind of the same thing. I was a little smaller than everybody else starting off. And then as I kind of became an upperclassman, became more experienced, stronger, faster, all that, I got moved back into the center midfield and kind of excelled there. And then same thing, the same kind of pattern as in the professional stages. My first years in Omaha was kind of more of a left midfielder, right midfielder. And then now I'm kind of finding myself in a more central role, and I feel like I'm more comfortable in that position. So yeah, it's always kind of been the same pattern, and it's always worked out the same way. So
You said that your father played in his time. Was he also a midfielder? Did the apple fall, pretty close to the tree?
yeah, he wasn't really a midfielder. He was kind of like an outside back defender, more defensive minded player. But I think also just kind of the players I idolized growing up watching. I watched a lot of Benfica, obviously, with my dad. So players like Pablo Aimar and stuff like that, they're just really offensive-minded midfielders, and that's kind of what inspired me to be that kind of player growing up.
That tracks. You're a product of the New England Revolution Academy, like you said, playing between 2013 and 2017. You were named Player of the Year after the 2017 campaign for the under 18s. You scored 16 goals in, I think it was 25 appearances. I guess if you were to summarize your time with the New England Revolution Academy, what would you go to describe it as? And also, do you think Isaac Enking and Kevin Vang are a little jealous that they didn't get the Player of the Year award themselves?
Well, I think actually Kevin Vang got it the year after I left, but yeah, I know Isaac wishes that he had that. But no, yeah, the Revs Academy was really huge to my development as a player. I remember what made me kind of decide to want to go to the Revs Academy was we were playing Red Bulls Academy, and we lost 10-0. They absolutely smoked us. So at that moment, I knew like I need something better to further my career to help me get to that next stage, which would be professional soccer. So yeah, I went to the Revs when I was 14, U14s, and I learned a lot that first year because I was playing with some of the best players in the region, players that are on the national team and stuff like that. So I instantly learned a lot my first year, kind of battling for starting spots with guys like Amos and Isaac, and we're always making each other better. But as I grew throughout the years, I was able to grow physically. That was a big part of it for me too, because my U14 year I was one of the smaller players. But as I grew physically and got experience as a player, I was able to earn time with the first team. I went on preseason with them in 2017 to Arizona. Got valuable minutes with them in their Desert Diamond Cup. And that just really helped me grow as a player and get noticed by colleges like Charlotte, and just helped me progress to the next stage of my career. So,
I'm assuming that's where you met Coach Kano for the first time.
yeah, Coach Kano was coaching the older groups when I was a U14.
So, in that spirit of, before we talk about your time at Charlotte, I want to ask for a player. You always hear the highlighted instances where a player signs a homegrown contract and they just continue to progress through into from the academy to the MLS next team into potentially first team minutes. But you went the path of Division I soccer and applied to the collegiate game. Is that something that we need to shake it's okay to still play collegiately? Because there's two camps, it seems like nowadays, of like, oh, stay in the system, stay in the academy and work your way through. And there's others that say like, hey, go and find out what the rest of the world is like, find out what other systems look like so that you can find your professional career in a different direction. We know which one you took, but what's the right answer there? Or is it both nowadays?
Yeah, I think there is no right answer with it. I think it kind of just depends on the player, especially at those ages when you're about to enter college, or if you're deciding when you're graduating high school. Basically, a lot of people are physically at different stages. So for me, basically, as I mentioned earlier, I was a little smaller than other players, still growing into my body, still becoming more athletic. So it made sense for me to kind of go to college first and help grow me physically and mature physically. Um, and some players, it's the opposite. They need to get better technically on the ball. And some players, they already have both at that age, at around 17, 18 years old. They have both. So they can make that jump to the professional levels. But I always joke with my parents. I tell them that I was born a little too early, because when I was going into college, it was either first team or nothing, because the Revs didn't have Revs 2 back then. And USL was still really kind of coming together and becoming a consistent league. So my only really option was either signing with the first team or going to college. And for me, we agreed with the academy that it was best for me to go to college first and kind of develop further there.
So your time with the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, you played for the 49ers. You helped take that team to their Division I North Carolina. That's where it is. You took them to their NCAA tournament for the 10th time in 11 seasons. You got named to first team Conference USA. You scored 5 goals and 10 assists. You basically did everything for that team. I have to ask, between that time from the academy into your time at Charlotte, where did you see your game grow?
Yeah, I think going from the Res Academy, where a lot of the focus was on the ball, possession-based style of play, attacking-based style of play. When we play a lot of teams, they were worried about us attacking them, so they would sit back kind of and defend more, so we'd have a lot of the ball. And then when I went to Charlotte, it was more of a defensive style of play, really focusing on that side of the ball. And of course, as well, we had good players as well, attacking-wise, but I would definitely say we were more of a defensive team. So that was kind of something new for me to work on, was just working on being like a really high pressing team, really getting after teams, tackling hard, winning our duels. That was something that was really important for us, because our mindset was kind of, even if you're not having a good game with the ball, you can always control your effort off the ball. So that was something that we were really, really hammering home all the time, was to just make sure that we're out competing the other team. So I think that just really going to Charlotte really helped me develop that side of my game, just out competing, working hard, pressing hard, and knowing you have to win the ball. You have to win the game on the defensive end as well as on the offensive end. And I think another important thing was the importance of winning. At Charlotte, we really have a high focus on winning and expectations, as one of the best sports for that school. So there was just a lot of pressure on winning, and that's something that's really valuable to take into the pro level, because obviously people's livelihoods depend on winning. So
Yeah, speaking of winning, that team, that season, and overall for Charlotte, it's a conference that it's very easy to drop points in ranking, and it's a place right now. I think they're in 12th, but when you were there, they were in 8th. So it's one of those situations where each season can have tremendous impact within Division One. You did see time playing against other RIFC teammates like Gabby Alves against Marshall. What have been some of the stories that came out of that Division One play time when it comes to your former team or your current teammates?
I would say with Gabby, my favorite memory playing against him was Marshall came to Charlotte to play against us in a really pivotal conference game. And then Gabby was just playing right back. The game was 0-0. It was a really tight game. Gabby was dribbling up the right wing, and he tries to cross it, gets it totally wrong, shanks it into the top corner of our goal, and they go up 1-0. But yeah, that's probably my favorite memory against one of my teammates here. But
Do you remind him of that pretty often?
yeah, I bring it up once in a while. But yeah, I played against a few guys in college as well as Clay Holstad and when he was in Kentucky, and JJ Williams as well when he was there. Um, so yeah, our team has a lot of guys who are really successful at good programs in college.
Speaking of the program itself, your bio says that you did redshirt for your senior year. I have to ask, was this a decision that was maybe looking at the timeline? Was it influenced by COVID probably because you wanted, I'm assuming it had something to do with extending your eligibility?
Yeah, exactly. When COVID came around that time, it was my senior year. Obviously, a really important year for trying to make it to the MLS draft and go pro. So when COVID pushed back that fall season to the spring, they kind of threw off the timing with how college soccer ends right when MLS and USL is starting. So for me, it kind of made sense to play that spring, do well that spring, and then kind of wait until take my red shirt and play again the next fall, so that the timing would be aligned when the draft is and when USL teams are looking for players. So I didn't want to really take that risk of leaving college in the spring when teams are in the middle of their season and their rosters are kind of already settled. It would just be kind of a risk to leave college at that point instead of just staying for one more season. So
Understandably, and it did pay off because you do end up signing your first professional contract after the end of your collegiate time, having signed with the Union Omaha in 2022, a team that was coming off of their first ever USL One championship the year prior. I'm curious, what was it like joining an organization knowing that they were trying to follow and build upon the recent success that they had the prior year? Was it something that added additional dimensions of pressure, or was it just an organization doing the steps that they needed to do year over year?
yeah, it's kind of like how I mentioned earlier that when we were at Charlotte, there was kind of that expectancy to win, that culture of winning. So, like I said, going to Charlotte helped me prepare for that. So when I got to Omaha, when I found out that there is this culture of winning and this culture of excellence, that I was already used to that and I was already prepared for that. So that kind of helped me just kind of fit into the team and the expectations, so that I really wasn't feeling that kind of pressure. And I think we saw that when on our Open Cup run when we made it to the quarterfinals, knocking off MLS teams, and we were playing really well. And then obviously we didn't end up winning much in the League One that year, but I think that Open Cup run kind of took a big toll on the team because we weren't really deep, and a lot of teams were just focusing on the league at that point while we were still playing in the Open Cup. But so that was kind of our priority. But yeah, especially that second year, we kind of got back to focusing on League One. We had a new coach come in, so it was kind of like a fresh start for some guys. But there was still that culture of winning that we know what we're expected to do. Nothing other than winning the league and getting first place. And we were able to get first place in the regular season and win that. And then just came up just short of the League One trophy. But yeah, there's definitely that expectancy of winning in Omaha, and it's a good culture they have there, and that's something that helps me as my career furthers to always have that culture of winning and always wanting to win and not letting that pressure kind of get to me.
You know, I'm glad that you mentioned the Open Cup run because I can't underestimate sell exactly how important that was, not just probably for yourself and for the team, but for USL overall. I think a lot of people don't realize that the Omaha Union are one of the first teams ever to win against an MLS Cup from a Division III standing. And then when you look back at that track record, which you obviously know, but for the listeners paying attention, not only did you beat Chicago Fire in penalties after extra time, but then you went on. That was only like your second round. That wasn't even the quarterfinal match. You
Right.
then had to go and play against Minnesota United, a game which saw you score the go-ahead winning goal at Alliance Field. And then in the quarterfinals, you went on to face Sporting Kansas City. When you look back at that, from either the nerve-wracking experience of having to watch your team go to penalty kicks after you had put on a 90-plus minute performance, to the goal that you scored in against Minnesota United, or just having 700 fans show up to support you in a 2.5 hour drive down to Sporting Kansas City, what would you say is the biggest moment that you had in the course of those three? I mean, there was technically four with the Chicago with the hailstorm, but what
Yeah.
was like the biggest moment that you had in that Open Cup journey for you personally?
I would say for me personally, they're obviously all great moments and extremely valuable experiences that I'll never forget. But for me personally, it has to be the Minnesota game. I still remember it vividly, like going into the game thinking like this is why you play. Going into this nice stadium, perfect grass. Um, it was raining that day, so the grass was a little wet, so the ball was moving quick, and you're playing against a MLS team, which is where we all want to be. So that was just kind of that moment where I was thinking to myself like I'd love to have a great game today, and I didn't even think about scoring really. It's just more of just putting on a good performance and trying to get a result out of it. And then obviously as the game went on, we went down 1-0. So that was kind of like, oh boy, here we go. Like this might get messy for us because they were really knocking on the door for more. But we were able to hold on and hold them off, and then we got one just before halftime, and then that kind of changed the momentum for us going into the second half, and we scored pretty early. I scored that goal pretty early in the second half. Um, so, and when I scored that goal, that was my first professional goal of my career. So to do it in that stage against that team in that stadium was just an amazing feeling that I'll never forget. And after the game ended, everyone being so happy in the locker room, celebrating, friends and family reaching out to me to congratulate me. And then my goal ended up being on Sports Center the next day. So just really kind of that full experience of what it's like to be like a top level professional athlete was just kind of all wrapped up in that 24 hours. So that was a really special experience for me.
Do you get caught up personally when you're on the road, it's an away game, and you go and do something that incredible and it just stuns the stadium? It goes from all the noise to just complete silence. Is there something that like you can drink in as a professional athlete and go, I just did this? Or is it something that you can't even think about because you're just celebrating the experience of scoring the goal or assisting on the goal in the moment in time?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing where you just almost don't even hear anything at all. You're not really like thinking about that kind of thing. You're not hearing even if the crowd was booing or anything. Like you just don't hear anything. It's kind of like a weird stage of euphoria you go through. So yeah, it's just kind of a weird experience you go through when you score like this weekend when the stadium. I remember being pretty loud. The crowd was rowdy, and then I scored the goal, and then it just felt like silence, like just focused on celebrating with my teammates. Not really worried about what the fans are doing or anything like that. But
So before we move on, I do want to ask, you've now seen firsthand what some of the biggest moments in the US Open Cup can look like. So I'm curious from your perspective and your take on, it still being one of the oldest tournaments in the United States. What's the importance that this tournament continues in future iterations?
yeah, I think it's extremely important, especially for USL clubs and USL players as well, because it's our chance to play against the top level teams in the country, the MLS teams, and that's something that's always going into the season. Was especially my first few years in Omaha when before all this stuff with MLS happened. Those were the most exciting games really for us, for the Open Cup games, because we knew that there was a potential that we might be able to play an MLS team. And that's just a really good opportunity for players to just kind of show their abilities and show how good the USL is. but as well as kind of get your name out there and have teams see you and potentially scout you. I remember our right back from Omaha, he ended up getting drafted by Minnesota after we played them in that season. So it's just a huge opportunity for players to just show their abilities, because there's good players in all three of these leagues: USL League One, Championship, and MLS. So it's just kind of disappointing to see MLS kind of trying to pull out of it a little bit, it seems like, because you're just kind of taking this opportunity away from a lot of players who are just trying to make it to that point. So yeah, hopefully the MLS teams keep entering their first teams, so that the magic of the cup and what it brings, because it's a global thing. Every nation has a cup like this, and the teams participate in it and want to win it as well, and it gives little teams opportunities to play against those big teams. So I think if this country wants to have that soccer culture that we so desperately want, like European countries have, this is a tournament we need to have and we need to take seriously.
So before we move on from Omaha, I do want to ask, I've never been yet. It's on my radar to go at some point. You've now spent some significant time there. What's something that people that have never been have the wrong impression about either the city or the state? What's something that you either can confirm or deny as a reputation that place has?
That's a tough one. I would say a lot of people probably think it's like really cold there a lot of the time. And it's not the case. In the winter, it is freezing. It gets to like -10 degrees and stuff like that. But in the summer, it can also get 100+ degrees. So that's kind of something that surprised me, was the weather. I couldn't believe how hot it got there in the summer, as well as how cold it got there in the winter. It's like you get kind of two extremes. But I would say a lot of the other kind of stereotypes are true. Like, it's very flat. It's kind of windy because it's so flat. A lot of people think there's nothing to do. I guess that's not true as well. There's stuff to do. It's a nice city. It's a very new city, clean city. So there's a lot to do there. It's fun. But yeah, it's a good place to live, I would say.
I mean, there's got to be lots to do there, because they could go and watch a Union Omaha game, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but let's move on to Rhode Island. How have you been enjoying your time in the Ocean State? It's not like you're not a native from the area, but maybe Rhode Island has shown you a different side of New England.
Yeah, I love Rhode Island. Growing up in Connecticut, a lot of my games, obviously with the Reds, were in Foxborough. So a lot of the time when we go to my games on the weekend, when we'd come home, we'd go through Rhode Island. My family's Portuguese, so we love Portuguese food and we love going to Portuguese restaurants. So we'd always try to stop at a Portuguese restaurant on the way home from my game. So as well as going to Narragansett, Newport, and stuff like that, we always kind of did that for summer vacations and stuff. So I kind of already had my Rhode Island experience growing up, and then going away for about 8 years to Charlotte and Omaha. I kind of got away from being able to have access to things like Portuguese food. And that's stuff that's like really important to me and my family, is being able to have access to that culture. So being in Charlotte and Omaha, it was kind of tough dealing with that. So it's nice to be back here and being able to go to a Portuguese restaurant if I want to, or go to a Portuguese grocery store and get the stuff I want, to be able to cook Portuguese food. And as well as being near all my favorite sports teams like the Celtics, Patriots, and Red Sox and all that. It's been nice to be able to go to those games again, and as well as enjoying all the beautiful beaches here in Rhode Island. So yeah, it's been great. I've been enjoying it a lot. I always loved the state, and I still do. So.
You had when you had first signed for the club, you were, I think, in Portugal at the time. Obviously, you just went on about how important your heritage and your culture is. How often do you get a chance to go back to Portugal and visit?
Yeah, when I was younger, we'd probably go every other summer during summer vacations from school. But now it's kind of, as life has gotten more busy, it's been tougher for us to go, me and my family. But so the last time before this trip I went was 2018. And then obviously when COVID came, it kind of made it tough to travel. So we weren't able to go for a little while. And then everyone's kind of schedules lined up for the off season last year, and we were able to book a family vacation to Portugal. So it's really good to get back out there.
So like you said, you're a Connecticut native, specifically from Bolton outside of Hartford. I want to get this out of the way so we can get back to the rest of the interview. But is the anti-New England hate that Connecticut residents get, is it appropriate? Is it accurate? Or is it slightly misplaced or mislabeled?
Yeah, I would say it's a little inaccurate. I felt growing up in Connecticut, I always considered myself a New Englander. So I'm not sure. Maybe I missed something while I was away in Charlotte and Omaha that something changed. But yeah, I've always considered myself in Connecticut to be part of New England. So
It could just be a Rhode Island and Massachusetts problem, right?
yeah, maybe.
So let's talk about Rhode Island FC. You sign from your time with Omaha, now with Rhode Island FC. Obviously, there's the connection that you had with Coach Cano and Coach Spratty. But can you walk us through the decision to sign with this club?
Yeah, for me it was important. Obviously, starting at Omaha to keep working my way up the ladder of professional soccer. Obviously, everyone wants to play at the highest level that they're capable of. So for me, after my last season in Omaha, my priority was to try to move up to USL Championship. Um, and then when I heard that Coach Cano and Coach Spratty were going to be in Rhode Island, they kind of got into contact with me and we started talking about it. And it just all really seemed to make sense for me to be able to come back to the region that I grew up in, being only an hour and a half away from family and friends, and being somewhere that I'm familiar with for the first time since I graduated high school, as well as with coaching staff that I was familiar with. It just kind of all made sense and was kind of a no-brainer for me.
You had actually mentioned in a previous interview that that was one of your goals coming out of college. Is that something that you would still say was absolutely it, or would it, if another USL Championship club had come calling, would it have been any different, or was your destination always to get back to New England?
Yeah, I think if all the factors are the same, I would say I would always try to choose a team in New England, and that was Rhode Island. So it was kind of no matter the circumstance, unless someone's throwing $1 million at me, which obviously is not going to happen. It was kind of always going to be Rhode Island. So
Not yet, Joe. Not yet.
not yet, not yet. Yeah.
Did your family give you any kind of grief or hard time knowing that they're all Connecticut natives and you've just now signed with what would become a local rivalry?
No, not at all. There's no, none of my family are fans of at Hartford Athletics, so there was no loyalty there to have to worry about.
That's what we like to hear. Before we jump into the mix, I guess if I could ask you from your own perspective, how would you describe the season overall? You know, would you put any special emphasis behind this being an expansion club, or at this point, is that narrative just put past because this team is gelled together and you've seen success both on and off the pitch?
Yeah, I would say a lot of teams would be happy with our season, even if regardless if they're an expansion team or not. So I think that and that's an important factor. So it's not something to be overlooked. So considering the fact that we are an expansion franchise and it's our first season and pretty much all our players it's their first time playing together. I think it's been really successful for us. And with that being said, we're still not satisfied. We still want more. We want to clinch playoffs, which we're in a position to do, and we also want to clinch a home game and host a playoff game. And we want to have the best season any expansion team in the USL has ever had. So I think we're happy with what we've done so far, but as an expansion team, I think we're ambitious and want to do more. And we're going to try our best to do that in the last 4 games.
You know, you've been a part now of two different professional organizations. Could you put a spotlight on what makes this team so special so far? Is it just in the roster construction? Is it in the relationship that the guys have built? Is it the way the coaching team has come together? What is it that makes this team special? That's not something that's written on the stats every game.
Yeah. I think it goes without saying that we have a lot of talented players. Obviously, with guys like Dequo who scored tons of goals and JJ who scored tons of goals in the USL, and guys like who are coming from MLS Next like Clay and Noah. They're obviously extremely talented. So we have a lot of talent on the roster without going to say, but I think what makes us different, what makes us gel as a team, is that everyone is friends in the locker room. Everyone wants to hang out with each other. They want to be together, and that's something that could be pretty rare at this level. I remember when I was in college during the spring, I would go train with a professional team. I won't say who they are, but I go train with them during the spring to stay sharp. And when you go into the locker room, it was like a funeral in there. Like no one's talking, there's no music, everyone seems like they don't want to be there. So I kind of thought that was kind of how professional soccer was going to be. It was kind of everyone's just there to collect paychecks and just try to get their stats and get out of there. But this team has been special because everyone loves each other. Everyone wants to hang out and is joking around and always making each other laugh. I think that's really important because then when you're on the field and you're tired and you need to make that last sprint, you're going to be willing to do it for your teammate to help cover for them. So I think that's something that we have really special that's going on.
You have 3 goals and 3 assists this season, with 85% of them coming off of the bench and all of them in the second half or later. 2 of them being critical game-tying assists that have helped keep RIFC in the playoff hunt. In your own words, what do you say to the tenacity you've demonstrated and your ability to break down teams? You've basically become this incredibly reliable contributor in critical moments late in games. What does that say to the game that you bring and the options that Coach Cano has in using you on the pitch?
Yeah, I think it's important as someone coming in the game as a sub. It's important to inject energy into the game and be kind of like a spark plug. So I think a lot of the times in the second half of USL games, the game kind of settles down and takes a breath after the first half when it's usually really chaotic. So that's just a really important time for subs to be impactful because it can either go one or two ways. They can either be energy drainers and kind of lower the level of the team and hurt them, or you can give the team energy and help push them over the line. So that's something that I try to do is come into the game and work hard for the team and try to make things happen and take risks. And that's something that I've been doing recently in games is kind of coming on and taking it to teams as they get tired. I'm full of energy and I'm ready to go. So it's kind of, I think it's hard for them to deal with that coming off the bench and bringing that kind of quality and energy at the same time. So I think that's kind of been the secret to it, really.
You know, when we first talked way earlier in the season, you may not even remember this, but earlier you were being used and deployed as this kind of right-sided midfielder. And you had expressed, that your game, kind of earlier how you had said on this podcast, that you love to play centrally and more direct. We've seen Coach start to insert you more into that role, that supportive CM role in the later half of the season. And it's clearly paid off for the team and for yourself. I guess I'd want to ask, what do you as a player have to do to earn the spot that you want on the pitch versus contributing and performing in the spot that's being requested of you by your coach?
Yeah, I think it's really, you have to show the coach that you're capable of doing it and excelling in that position. But as well, it's important to show the coach that they can trust you in that position. And that's something, especially in the center of the field, is really important, is that the coach can trust you because the ball is coming to you a lot. You're getting a lot of touches on the ball, and you're getting the ball kind of in dangerous situations where if you turn it over, the team could go and score. So I think that's something that a lot of players don't realize a lot of the times, and something that's really important is that you need to show the coach that they can trust you, and then once they trust you, you need to perform and get goals and assists and be able to perform when they give you that chance and take that opportunity.
So has Coach been asking you to work on your game in a different capacity then, or have you just been getting new training and new opportunities during your practice minutes this season?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just kind of me adapting and getting used to the new league that I'm in and new team and kind of getting used to my role. So that's part of it. And as well as it's important to, especially when you're an attacking player, you need to score, you need to assist to maintain your position. So at the beginning of the season, I feel like I was playing well, but our offense was kind of struggling and not getting many goals. And I wasn't getting any goals or assists at that point yet. So that was important for me to start to do that and have some output statistically. So that's kind of something that I started to focus on as the season went on, as I got more comfortable at this level.
I asked Noah, if you saw it a couple of weeks ago, if he had a personal benchmark. He said he did, but he wouldn't share it. Do you also have a personal benchmark, or at this point, is it just being better than you were the previous game?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I'm not sure if I'd call it a benchmark, but just kind of comparing how I was my first year in Omaha, just kind of using that as a benchmark, see how I did then compared to now. Um, but yeah, I try not to think about it too much. I just try to live in the moment and take it game by game, and do my best in that moment, because in the end of the day, that's all that really matters.
And then, you have had this tremendous super sub impact role on the team, but I know, asking any player, nobody wants to be a super sub. They all want as many minutes as possible. What is it that you need now to make sure that you can eventually earn those starting minutes consistently? What is it that you've been practicing? What is it that coach has worked with you this season so that you can get to that kind of role in a future opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily something I'd say I've been working on, but it's kind of something I mentioned earlier about consistently being able to give the team output, give the team goals and assists. Because at the end of the day, that's what's most important for a player in my position. So, um, and we have a really deep team, a big roster with a lot of talented guys. So, a lot of the times it's guys, they have the opportunity to take your spot, and they take it and they hold on to it, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. But I know when my moment comes that I'll be ready to take it, and hopefully hold on to the starting position as long as possible. But yeah, at the start of the season, I was starting most of the games, pretty much all the games, and we made the changes necessary to try to keep it to find goals and assists, and um, kind of found my role within the team, and it's been good. But obviously, yeah, you always want to be starting games as much as possible. But I think it's just important just to take your opportunity when you get it.
It's going to be hard for Coach Cano to deny you much longer because, and we need to talk about this because the Derby was one of the biggest games of the season, not just for the team, but for the fans. And I'm going to avoid giving you a hard time about the Hartford connections here for a second, but you did score a goal in one of the most electric performances, not only for the club, but for the league this season, and won over the hearts and minds of thousands of fans along the way. I guess I want to ask you, what is the impact that you've seen that this derby has already had on both communities? And do you feel like this is officially a rivalry now, or is there something more that needs to be built into this before we can give it the title and the attention that it deserves as a quote unquote most important derby in the USL right now?
Yeah, yeah, I think you see it when the games happened. When we went to Hartford, we brought a lot of fans there, and it was a sellout crowd, and the atmosphere was electric. And then the same thing when they came to us, it was an amazing crowd, sellout crowd. They brought fans, and they were shooting fireworks off in the crowd. So it was just kind of a crazy atmosphere. Um, and that's kind of what these rivalry games are about, is that the fans are having fun, and really excited about the game, and they really want to win as well. So you could tell when we won that last game, our fans were ecstatic, and that was probably the happiest we've ever seen the fans over a win. And the same thing for the Hartford fans, that they looked pretty upset about it, and distraught. So I kind of think that's what derbies are about, especially when you look at European teams, and those derbies are obviously extremely serious and life or death to some people. You see when they lose, it ruins their week, and when they win, it's the best thing in the world. And yeah, it's just kind of that thing that takes time to develop, and it's only the first year of it happening, and it's already at this level. So it's just really exciting to imagine what it's going to be in the future, especially once we have our own stadium completed, and we're playing in there. It's going to be an unbelievable rivalry, especially how close we are together. It's our only bus ride of the year to Hartford, so that's how close we are. So yeah, it's something really special that the league has on their hands, and hopefully it keeps developing on the uptrend.
Agreed. And, on top of that goal you scored most recently this weekend, like you already mentioned, you score against San Antonio FC, putting the nail in their coffin, probably for making the playoffs in the Western Conference, and almost cementing our chances of being in the playoffs ourselves. For this squad, I want to ask, has the conversation shifted yet from, when we heard from the front office, when we heard from the staff originally, it was that this team would be competitive in its first year, but there was never really any, we'd win the whole thing. It was just like we'd get to playoffs. That's mostly here. It's not written in stone yet, but it's almost there. Has the narrative in the locker room changed from we are making playoffs to we're going to win the whole thing at this point? Or are you guys not ready to kind of put any bets down just yet?
Yeah, I think we try not to get ahead of ourselves, not because we don't believe that it's possible, but that we know that if it's kind of a dangerous mindset to have, that if you think you're better than you are, this game has a funny way of humbling you. So I think we just kind of try to take it one game at a time and think step by step. So first step, make playoffs. Once we check that off, next step is try to get a home game, and then once that's been completed, then we worry about whatever's next. So I think it's important for us to just stay grounded and stay focused on what we have to accomplish first before we start worrying about what can come in the future.
That makes sense. You do have two really important games coming up. First with Tampa Bay Rowdies this weekend. By the time this interview comes out, the game will have already happened, and then Charleston Battery away. But I want to ask you, through the highs and the lows, you were talking earlier about some of those memories that have been made and how great this team has become together and their friendships. What has been maybe the penultimate moment of the season for you, whether it's something related to the performance on the pitch, or maybe just something that's happened when people don't see it, and it's just something that's happened, between you and the guys that you can, of course, share and not get anyone in trouble?
Yeah, I think something that kind of sticks out to me is especially when I was in the Res Academy, it was kind of that same thing where a lot of us were best friends off the field, and we're always hanging around each other, hanging out, doing things when we go on trips. And that's kind of what made the Res Academy so special for me and what made us good as a team back then. And this is kind of the first time since then that I've experienced this kind of closeness as a team. So it's just kind of doing things like going to hang out with each other and going to experience Rhode Island. Like we went to Waterfire, a group of us all together went to it. So it's just little things like that, experiencing that together and hanging out off the field and building our relationship off the field that just kind of stands out to me.
Does Steven Turnbull know that he now has to give 22 +1 invites for his wedding now that you guys are this tight-knit family? Is he aware that he's just expanded his wedding guest count?
Yeah, I think he's aware of it. He's just got to talk to his fiance about it first.
So, Joe, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. I want to end with asking you this one question. What do you do with your time off the pitch, right? Like we always talk so much about the minutes that you contribute, the work that you put in, but who is the Joe Brito when he doesn't have a Rhode Island FC kit on? What hobbies, activities are you getting into? And if there are any sites or bites that you want to give a shout out to, let us know right now.
Yeah, I have a lot of hobbies. That was something my Omaha coach told me last year is important for me as a player you can't just focus on soccer because you'll drive yourself nuts and you need hobbies. So I have a few hobbies. I'm really into cars. So I have my car that I'm really passionate about, doing modifications to it and taking care of it, going to car shows and stuff like that. I have my girlfriend here. She lives with me here. So we like to just go around and explore Rhode Island together, going to Narragansett and Newport. Our favorite restaurant's Eau Denise, a Portuguese restaurant. We always go there probably every week almost. So that's kind of the stuff that I do to keep myself busy when I'm not on the field.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I want to end with one last little quick question. How far is Benfica going to go in Champions League this season?
Well, they got a big win yesterday, 4-0 against the Atletico. So I'm going to say quarterfinals they'll make it to. I'll keep it humble.
We shall see what happens, and we shall also see what you and the rest of the team is able to perform for the rest of the season and hopefully deep into playoffs. Thanks again for joining us, and we can't wait to see you out there in the next game. In the meantime, please make sure to check us out and our friends over at The Blazing Musket at theblazingmusket.com, where they cover all of your New England soccer coverage, including RIFC. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast, our Instagram at Raising Anchor, and our own website, raisinganchorpodcast.com. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Can't wait to see you out there, and I hope this season just ends on an incredibly high note for you and for the team.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.